Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, robot, and loin streamer. No longer robot idiot now. And today we've got a book review for a New York Times best-selling author, Riley Sager, and one of his more recent novels, Survive the Night. Let me tell you, it is going to be a ride, and not specifically because most of this book takes place in a car. But before we get started, if you enjoy what I do on this channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. Number one way is through Lemoi, where I give you a monthly prompt. You guys write stories, and the top 10 of those submissions are featured on the channel, and hopefully can siphon more people to your creative areas if you guys have online presences, or we just laugh and bask in greatness. Or the other way is if you're an indie author and you have a book out or that's coming out, use the Fresh Meat feature to submit your cover and your first chapter, and eventually they will be read on the channel. I kind of pick those at random, so when they happen, they happen. If you have multiple books, you can submit them all at once. That's kind of one of the reasons why I do it at random. So there's that. And then number three, if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books. I appreciate if you check them out. I more appreciate if you enjoy anything about them. Especially the characters, but I digress. So with that said, we're going to be talking about Riley Sager's novel, Survive the Night. And I don't think this one is specifically a New York Times bestseller, but he is a New York Times bestselling author. He's a mainstream author. This has come through Penguin, an imprint of Penguin. And I mostly heard about this book through Murphy Napier mentioning it in her end of 2022 stuff. She uploaded a short that said, how could she forget to put this one in her worst books? So, of course, I had to go check it out and see what was going on. And I need to ask, Maya Ziz and Dutton Imprint at Penguin Random House, you need to answer for your war crimes that are this book. At the very least, for everybody watching this and for what we are about to go through, let this be a lesson to what it is that traditional publishing is currently offering readership and what is being sold in stores via traditional publishing. If you have questions about whether your quality is good enough for something, or if you've been in those conversations where people are like, traditional publishing proves that there is quality, this book proves that there is not. There is no quality checking or sense being made through traditional means. I'm not saying all books that are traditionally published are this poorly thought out. However, there's just as much a chance of picking up a bomb in traditional publishing as there is in indie publishing. Pretty much basically the same chance of having a good time, except I think in general, you can find much more creativity in indie publishing right now because traditional publishing has a stranglehold on what they are allowing to be published right now based on ideas. I've heard plenty of agents say that they strangle for certain perspectives, political points. They check out your social media, and if you don't have the right things on your social media, even if you have nothing political on your social media at all, they will not take you. So just know how biased traditional publishing is, and that traditional publishing is not a moniker of quality anymore. But this is so bad. This book is so poorly thought out. It was so... my gosh. Thank you for blessing the end of my 2022 with this, Murphy. Just remember as we go into this book that this is not this author's first book. I think the page says that I think the Goodreads page says this author has 6 books, and this is one of his more recent books, and he is also a New York Times bestseller. So keep that in mind as you absorb this plot line. The prologue, it starts out with a prologue, like a movie setting the scene with snapshots of an image where a couple of people are fighting each other inside of a car. This may feel like it is going to be a climactic moment, but is actually more sort of in the middle when the main character is fighting off this guy. After we get through some of those snapshot cuts, we are at the beginning of the story with Charlie, the main character, waiting on a car outside of her university because she's about to head home early from the semester, probably quitting school altogether after her roommate, Madeline, was murdered. There are flyers all over the campus about murder because this is not the first murder that has happened with students near campus, on campus in the last couple of years. They recently held a vigil, and she's having a mental breakdown because Madeline was not just her roommate, but also a very good friend of hers. And so she doesn't think that she can maintain doing school anymore. She's tried for the last couple of months, maybe a month, and it's just not working out. So she is going to go home. It is also about 7 to 10 days before Thanksgiving, which that needs to be brought up because she, instead of calling family, which her parents are dead, she still has her grandmother. I don't know if she has more extended family than that. But instead of calling her grandmother or asking her boyfriend and just waiting around school, like staying in her boyfriend's dorm or something, she decided that her, as a paranoid, freaked out person whose roommate was just murdered, she was going to put up an ad on the bulletin board in school to ask for a ride from a stranger. So this is actually where we're at. She's standing outside at the curb at 9 o'clock at night because that was the earliest that the guy offering her the ride, Josh, could get there. He gets there shortly after 9 o'clock, not quite on time, but a little bit late. And somehow she's totally okay with this setup. Just before going out onto the curb, she finishes packing up her dorm room with her boyfriend, Robbie, helping her. He's pretty sure / hoping that she's actually going to come back the next semester and this isn't for real, but they also both kind of know that this is final goodbyes and that she is done. The main character, Charlie, also says that Robbie is a catch, but she's willing to let him go to get out of this school. Charlie, the main character, also says that Robbie is a catch, like he is a really great guy, but she's willing to let him go to get out of the school because she just can't handle it. Again, if he is a catch, I don't see him having a problem being like, hey, you can stay in my dorm, or hey, I will take you home this weekend even, because it's only a 6-hour drive to get back home for her. So they could do that over a weekend. So once Charlie's dorm is completely packed up and she's ready to go, they're both standing on the sidewalk waiting for Charlie's ride to show up. And she's thinking about how Maddie died, which was by a stranger who is still on the loose, by the way. They're both constantly thinking about how this murderer is out on the loose, to the point that Charlie's boyfriend is like, call me when you get home, and if you see a payphone, also call me using that because I need to make sure that you're okay. Why is she taking a ride from a stranger across state lines under these circumstances when she knows that these circumstances exist? She is literally asking to die. Also, I should mention that just before getting into this situation with the car ride, she also dumped all of her antipsychotic pills, because of course she's on antipsychotics, down a toilet, because she didn't like how they made her feel. However, those antipsychotics help her keep track of what is reality and what is not reality, because trauma in her past caused her to start projecting an alternate reality over everything else that looks more like a movie, that creates picturesque scenarios. And so sometimes she can't tell the difference between when she's experiencing movie vision and when she's in real life vision. However, apparently the best time to go cold turkey on your antipsychotic medicine is right before getting into a car with a stranger after your best friend was murdered by somebody who is still on the loose. This is the high IQ that we are dealing with when it comes to bestsellers, apparently. So Josh, her ride, gets there to pick her up and helps Charlie load everything into his trunk. He doesn't let her see what's in his trunk, though, and blocks her view with his back. She literally notices that it looks like he's hiding something from her in his trunk, and she just goes, that's fine. Also, her boyfriend, Robbie, pretty much disappears at this point. Doesn't greet the guy, doesn't ask the guy questions, doesn't ask the guy who he is, does nothing. Doesn't even help to load the stuff in the car, and doesn't say goodbye to his girlfriend, which at this point just made me think that maybe Robbie was a figment of Charlie's imagination, since he randomly just disappeared. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't help her, period. It looked like Josh didn't greet him at all. And we know that this girl has delusions. So you'd think it would make perfect sense if Robbie turned out to be a figment of her imagination. In fact, that would have been a great turn of events for this, but that is not where we go. Robbie does actually exist. Spoiler alert. Tell me if you can guess where the story is going before we get that far into it. So Josh and Charlie are off without saying goodbye or thank you to Robbie for standing with her, and Josh invites Charlie to sleep during the 6-hour drive, to which she says no because she's still suspicious of him. Then he says something about being weird that she doesn't have a car, and enter into a narration about how her parents drove into a tree and died when she was young. She lives now with her grandmother in the house that she inherited from her parents, and she feels culpability for her parents' death. And Josh tries to make small talk, but Charlie doesn't really respond more than she has to. Josh gets Charlie to talk about movies because movies are her life and her major in college. And then she's talking about how much movies mean in her life. Like, they have made living doable. Because when her parents died and her grandmother moved in, her and her grandmother coped with the grief that they felt by watching movies together. And this is really when Charlie's delusional state started really coming out. Specifically, she realized that she was having delusions when she went to her parents' funeral, and there was all of this music and it was so picturesque. And then after the funeral, she went to her grandmother and commented on some of the things that she saw at the funeral. And grandma was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so then that's when Charlie started realizing that there was this overlay of a picture movie-esque delusion on real life to make it more idealistic, to make it more beautiful, to make it more extreme. And we get more references to this throughout, that movies make things more perfect. They make things more exciting. They make things bigger and better than real life ever actually is. Despite how much Charlie loves the movies, she doesn't want to work in movies because it'll kill the magic behind them. Instead, she wants to get a degree in movies and then be teaching movies, which I think still basically kills the magic behind movies because you're learning the function and the art and the formulas behind making movies. But maybe it's just that distance and not being able to see the wires that would be there if you were working in the movies. I'm not really sure. It's also at this point that she tells Josh that she sees pictures in her head, but also she now wishes that they could go away because they got somebody hurt, because her delusions cut in and sort of blurred the vision of what happened to Madeline. Because it turns out that Charlie was there the night that Madeline was murdered. She wasn't there while Madeline was being murdered, but she was accompanying Madeline up until a certain point, and after she left, and as Charlie left, she saw Madeline standing with somebody, but she couldn't recognize his face because there was just the blur of the movie screen going on, turning that into a mysterious stranger. And then she left and she cannot recall the face of the person that was standing next to Madeline, to even kind of guess who might have been the last person to see her, which may have been the killer. Josh is very interested in Charlie at this point. He's asking if she's single, and instead of Charlie saying no, she's not, or, actually breaking up with Robbie, because before she left, she didn't actually break up with Robbie, and Robbie still thought maybe we'll have a relationship in the future. Instead of giving a clear answer either way, she says, I don't know what the future holds, so it could go either way, which means, yeah, she's checked out of the relationship she has, but she didn't tell Robbie that she did. Josh is also single and ready to mingle. He makes that very clear. He also sounds like he's fishing to see if anyone would miss her if she goes missing. Then they're playing a movie quote trivia game, and of course Josh throws out a psycho quote because he's supposed to look as suspicious as possible. Josh is asking her if she's overwhelmed with college and taking a break, and now she's internal narrating about how she chose this school for affordability and her plan was to become a professor of film studies, then backstory into Madeline and Charlie meeting and what Maddie's life was like. At this point, we're probably maybe a fifth of the way in, and we've had more backstory than active story. Josh shares that he was a custodian at the university, but he just quit. His dad had a stroke, and he says he's going to Toledo, which is a different place than where he told Charlie he was going earlier. She's suspicious that he's lying, that his face doesn't look right, but then again, she convinces herself that the red flags she's feeling or believing aren't actually real and just keeps going on like business as usual. Josh is like, oh, I think I recognize you now. You're that girl, aren't you? Assuming that he means the one with the murdered roommate because everybody knew who she was when her roommate was murdered. Fly into flashbacks again where Maddie and Charlie are going to a cover band concert that Maddie really, really wanted to go to and Charlie wanted nothing to do with because Charlie is more of an introvert. During the flashback, we see that Charlie both admires Maddie but also resents Maddie because Maddie was like over the top. She was, I think it said that she was like Katharine Hepburn. She had a lot of charisma, but she would also mock Charlie for being kind of less than her, for being not as showy as her, who was more like, Charlie is literally compared to Audrey Hepburn, by the way. So you've got them as the Hepburns. But so Maddie is more social and more outgoing and more boisterous and drags Charlie along to this club. But Charlie doesn't want to go. And because Charlie finds out or kind of figures, oh, you only brought me so that so that you could have somebody to take you home when you get drunk. I hate you. She left the club early. This is why she blames herself for Maddie's murder. Though at this point in the story, I had vibes that the main character, Charlie, was the murderer of Maddie and was having a delusional psychotic break, which gave her Robbie and also which made her think that there was another person there that would have killed Madeline. And that would have been a great twist. That is not where this goes. So at the bar, when she discovered that Maddie just wanted her to be there to drag her home when she got drunk, Charlie calls Maddie a bad friend and walks away. Then she gets more upset when Maddie isn't chasing her. She sees some guy there with no features standing beside Maddie as she pulls out a cigarette, and that was the last time that she saw her. Charlie then says that she told the police that she didn't know what she saw. She was sent to a therapist to try to recover the information. Everybody was mad at her because she couldn't remember who it was that she saw, and then they were even more suspicious of her specifically because she didn't want to go to her roommate's funeral because she was still so emotionally raw. Finally, we come out of the flashback of all of that, and Josh asks if she wants to talk about what she was just imagining, and Charlie says no. They stop at a 7-Eleven, and while Josh goes inside to get a coffee, Charlie thinks about how she probably should have waited until Thanksgiving to go home and then have Robbie drive her, and it wasn't really that far away. At this point, I'm like, how did Robbie allow his girlfriend to get into a car with a stranger and not insist that she wait so that he can take her home in just a couple of days? Especially with the given circumstances for why she is fleeing. She is obviously in an emotional crisis mode, so he can't really care about her, or this is just poorly put together, which both probably, let's be honest. With Charlie's growing paranoia, she climbs out of the car to maybe go to a payphone to call Robbie to say, hey, can you come pick me up? I think I want to stay until you can take me home. But then she gets out of the car. She sees a couple other people pull up to the 7-Eleven, and a woman that gets out of the car reminds her of Madeline. And she's like, oh, I can't go back to the dorm because I can't put up with being in that dormitory where my best friend / roommate used to be, where she will not be if I go back. So she gets back into the car, can't possibly wait 5 days, can't possibly stay in her boyfriend's dorm. Better to take your chances with a strange driver. Josh returns and they get going again after Josh trips, and she helps Josh pick up his things. As they drive away, the wallet Josh dropped falls open and she looks it over. And as you might imagine, let's add some more suspicions. I don't know why I talk like that. Let's add some more suspicions to Josh that his license plate is from his driver's license is from Pennsylvania and has the name Jake Collins on it, not Josh. Uh-oh, he's not who he says he is. So she's now paranoid and wants to figure out a way to see if Josh's car is actually registered in Pennsylvania, because she didn't look at the license plates on the car at all before getting in, and looking at the insurance cards would seem too suspicious. She asks Josh some questions about his life and campus, trying to get him to trip up and find the lies in what he is saying. She does by mentioning a building that she then says doesn't exist, but then she does know actually does exist on the campus, and Josh's opinion swapped back and forth until she was like, clearly he doesn't know the college campus. Charlie keeps zoning out. As they drive, Charlie keeps zoning out. Josh wants to play 20 questions. Charlie's both sure that Josh wants to hurt her, but also unsure if Josh wants to hurt her, but also says that the stakes are higher for this game of 20 questions right now than they ever were for her as a child. Conveniently, she also can't remember any of the questions that she ever asked as a child when she would play 20 questions that were always like honing in on the things that she was imagining that were being imagined. She then asks questions, leading her to think that the 20 question subject is Josh's penis, but she narrows it down to the above the shoulders. She's also then suddenly worried that Josh might be a sexual predator and maybe she shouldn't have gotten into the car with him, but if I just remain smart and brave, I'll be safe. Girl, it is way too late for that. If you were to remain smart and safe, you wouldn't have gotten in the car in the first place. There's now a car in the rearview mirror, and she's feeling more comfortable because they're not alone on the dark road. It turns out the object was a tooth. The object of the 20 questions was a tooth. Charlie guesses it. This ties back into the campus killer that Charlie knows about, plucking teeth out of people's faces, and now Charlie is more than certain that this guy is in fact the killer. Frick, she's in the car with the killer, and she is panicking. Josh is like, OMG, you're not mad about me picking the tooth thing, right? And Charlie just internally is seething and panicking, but she's now thinking about jumping out of the car, except it's going too fast, and if she jumps out of the car, then she's really going to hurt herself, so she can't. So Charlie's trying to figure out a different way in order to contact the other drivers on the road. And instead of just asking Josh if he can stop somewhere because she's hungry or she needs a pop, she writes help on the foggy window, hoping that the state trooper in the other car will see it. Josh taps the brakes and the trooper passes. Charlie cries in silence that her plan has been foiled. She's thinking now about jumping out of the car, but they're going too fast and they're on too slim of a road, so she can't possibly. She's thinking about how it would be suicidal to jump, but it's kind of funny considering getting in the car in the first place was a suicidal action to begin with. They pull up to a toll booth that gives Charlie a chance to climb out of the car, But instead of climbing out of the car, Josh says, wow, that must have been one hell of a movie that you had in your head, huh? Because Charlie has told him about her delusions earlier in the ride, and so he noticed that she zoned out, and he assumes that she was having a delusional movie play in her head. And having been asked that question now, Charlie is like, what the frick? What does he mean by that? And so she decides she can't jump out of the car at this point, even though she is stopped. She needs to know what he means by what he just asked, even though she'd already told him that she has delusional movies play in her head. So they get paid through the toll booth. Then they get moving again. And immediately once they're moving again, Charlie is like looking back at the toll booth worker going, no, my chance of escape is gone. Yeah, she really is that dumb. Like, this book should not exist. For real. Once they're moving again, Charlie calls out Josh for lying to her, and he's like, okay, you got me, but would you have gotten into the car with me if you knew that I found you on campus, but I didn't work on campus and I didn't belong on campus? Josh says that he did all of this because he was depressed and lonely and didn't want to drive home to his sick dad alone. Charlie asks if they even played 20 questions because she's now not sure if like the state trooper was real or 20 questions was real or anything that they just did in the car was real. And Josh says, no, we never played 20 questions. I think you were imagining that. So now Charlie is panicking about just how delusional she is. And it doesn't really make sense because she literally dumped her own medications down the drain prior to this ride when she knew that she was prone to having delusions when in high stress situations. Like, I get if you don't like what your pills make you feel like, especially antipsychotics. However, if you're going to go into a car with a stranger and you know you have a difficulty telling realities apart, why would that be the time to go and dump them? Because you know you're only going to have problems, because you know you're only going to be high stress this whole time. Also at this point, Charlie is still going, is he the killer? Is he not the killer? I'm not really sure. They stop at a rest stop. Charlie is panicking. She tries to use the payphone. Phone is broken. She is hiding in the bathroom when someone comes in and checks all of the stalls. It's a woman who immediately recognizes Charlie as an idiot for being reckless at a truck stop in the middle of the night. Charlie has a flashback seeing Maddie come in and insult her, then berate her before leaving her behind the night she died. Charlie begs the young woman to drive her out of here and says that the guy that she's with might be a killer and she needs help. The chick thinks that Charlie is insane, and I don't blame her. At this point, she then returns to Josh. We also get a point of view switch that goes to Josh so that he can tell you he is the bad guy, basically. He's detailing everything he's done to this point to fool the main character that she's crazy, including saying, oh, the 20 questions game was delusional, there wasn't a state trooper when there actually was, and he details his BTK kit in his trunk. Why? No real reason. It's just an internal monologue to tell the reader information. Actually, their only reason here is because the author wants to lie to you through the POVs of the other characters. This will be a running thing because the author wants to mislead you. There is no reason for this within character to have this perspective and to go through the details that Josh goes through, except to mislead, because Josh is not the killer, but it is going to make you believe that he is for a while. Eventually, Charlie comes back. They get in the car. They're playing 20 questions again, and they're driving. There's really not a whole lot that you can do from a car, apparently, to make the story go forward, because a lot of this is just back and forth questions and answerings, very similar to what was in The Pawn and the Puppet when Skylena was talking to her man in that, and they were just asking each other questions in order to pass time. But just a reminder, this is just a 6-hour trip to get from where they're at to, I think, Ohio is where she needed to go. And they've already made 7-Eleven, a truck stop, and now they're at a diner, and it's the middle of the night. What are you doing? I've made fewer stops on longer travels. So they stop at this diner and sit down and have something to eat. And Charlie is very, very sure that Josh is a killer. So she's like, I need to get away from this guy. Now, Charlie is constantly thinking about how buff Josh is and how attractive Josh is and how Josh is so much more stronger because he's a young, fit man, and how Josh could probably wipe the floor of everybody that is in the diner. So then we switch to a POV of Robbie, her boyfriend, who admits to being in pain, having been broken up with without being told that he was being broken up with. And so he's just been up watching reruns on television, trying to cope with the pain. And eventually, Charlie actually calls him because she got to a phone booth outside of the diner. and was going to call him to come and pick her up. However, as she's standing in the phone booth, Josh comes out of the diner and is standing on the other side of the phone booth watching her, so she doesn't feel comfortable telling Robbie, hey, can you just come pick me up? I don't feel safe. Instead, she weasels around, drops some code words, and then tells Josh everything is good. It really doesn't make any sense to be in this public place and be like, I was begging for a public place in order for this guy to not attack me. And then every chance that she gets, she's conceding to just let this guy control her. After the phone call, Charlie goes back into the grill thinking about how she can't ask anybody for help. After the phone call, Charlie goes back into the grill thinking about how she can't ask anyone for help because none of them could literally throw hands with Josh. Obviously, that's the only way to deal with him, right? And then she and Josh hear the phone booth ring from outside, and she refuses to go and answer it, even knowing it's Robbie calling back. In the booth, Josh is asking in the diner booth, Josh is asking Charlie if she was talking to her boyfriend in code. Well, Charlie's spent the last half a book panicking about Josh being a killer, including the last handful of chapters going, how do I get away from him? He offers her an out, saying, I think that you should stay here and find you another way home. It's fine. And for how panicked she is, you think that she would jump at that chance. But instead, she's arguing with herself that Josh is lying, that Josh saying she could stay here was not true, that he would force her to go along with him and his plans, even if she said, thanks, I would love to stay. She then accuses Josh of having forced her into the car because he lied to her, but he never did. She did no research on the guy that she accepted a ride to. They just kind of flirted at the bulletin board, and she was like, yeah, I'm into this. This character refuses to take responsibility for her own actions and her own choices. Charlie is then panicking about all of this and still doesn't trust Josh in any serious way, even though all she needs to do is say, thank you. I will wait here for my boyfriend. We're not that far away. Instead, she wants to scream at him about how he's a lying serial killer because that's definitely what you do in public. Then the waitress comes over and accidentally spills coffee all over So Charlie then pretends this is her first chance to get away and runs into the bathroom to clean herself. Now we switch perspectives to the waitress, who, from her perspective, she immediately thought that there was something suspicious about Charlie and Josh when they came in. She's like, that girl looks like she's in trouble. I know that I should do something, but I also know that I shouldn't do something, but I'm doing something. That was literally the mindset of that character. So now Marge goes into the bathroom to meet Charlie. She asks if everything's okay with Charlie, and Charlie, despite not having to hide her fear, tells Marge everything is absolutely a-okay. She even says she knows that Marge will believe her. She's like, well, this night could be over because Josh said that he'd let me go, so I might not need Marge anyway. But if he's lying, I don't want Marge to get in trouble by telling her what's going on. Yeah. Just build more allies. Just tell more information. Like, there is no reason for her to do this except to prolong the book pages. So Marge says okay and steps out. Charlie breaks down in tears and hopelessness at all of the situation and how she's basically already dead, even though she just told Marge to go away because it's fine because she could just tell Josh that she's staying. But then also, she says that she doesn't want to get away anymore because, But then she also says that she doesn't want to get away from Josh just yet. She reviews how she was taught in school that women are abused by men, but she didn't think about it until Maddie was killed. And now she blames herself because that's what women are taught to do. Women are taught to take responsibility for everybody else's actions. Charlie has an internal monologue about how she blamed herself for Maddie's murder because society tells women everything is their fault and no one told them that it wasn't their fault, gosh darn it, and it wasn't their fault that men are bad sometimes, and if only men told women that women weren't responsible for the bad things that happened to them, then women would actually believe it. If only men would tell women what to believe, women would believe it better. That is really what it is saying at this point. And I have part of that monologue later because it is so freaking painful. So after she internally stokes herself up about how terrible men are and how society lies to women to make them take responsibility for men, Charlie works herself up into a rage of wanting to kill Josh because she is convinced he murdered those women, and now it is her job to enact revenge so that she doesn't go to hell by letting him hurt other people. This is punctuated with the pain of an empowered woman monologue and ending with, I am a fucking femme fatale. And so now she's going to make Josh pay for something that she has no evidence of and enjoy every second of harming him. She is now a sadist. Villain arc. What this book taught me at this point is the only way for women to be strong is to enjoy torturing men. Thank you, Riley Sager. She continues to make excuses as to why she's the only one that can punish Josh, and she can't enlist the police or her boyfriend or Marge. We know it's a kink. Charlie, you can just say it. You don't have to go on how it's this moral high code thing that is your responsibility because you're a good person, a better person than others. Just say that it is a kink. Also just made me more sure that she definitely killed Maddie and then made up a delusion that she did not. So she goes back into the diner and turns Come As You Are on the jukebox to toy with Josh, because that's a song that's been playing in the car every time Josh has lied to her. She then sits down and asks him if he's ready to go, and he's like, I'm not taking you. And she's like, oh, hell yes you are, you stupid bitch. She basically strong-arms him into doing it, while also threatening him with, lol, my boyfriend called the cops and they'll be here soon, so why don't we just leave before the cops show up and you get in trouble? Soon enough, the cops actually do show up and they start asking people around the diner if everything is okay because they got a distress call from somebody else who wanted a wellness check or something. And Marge sits down at the table and Josh holds a knife to her under the table in order to make sure that Charlie behaves herself for some reason. And then Charlie's over here thinking about how Stockholm Syndrome women stay with their captors because they're scared their plan of escape will fail. That's not what Stockholm Syndrome is. And there's so much flip-flopping in this specific scene in the diner that Charlie has no specific motivation. It is just like everything all at once switching. I need my revenge. I'm scared of him. I'm Stockholm Syndrome, but not really Stockholm Syndrome because my definition is just that I'm going to fail to get away if I don't get away. None of it makes any sense. On the way out of the diner, after the cops leave, Charlie and Josh are going back to the car so they can continue their drive. She leaves her bag in the booth inside of the diner to give her an excuse to run back and grab a knife off the table so that she can use that as a weapon later against Josh. Back in the car, they're driving, and Josh asks Charlie how much she knows. She says she knows everything, and she only got back in the car because she had to. Josh says he actually likes Charlie, and so he didn't want to hurt her. Josh also admits that not everything he said to her is a lie. His mom did leave the way that he told her that he left, and his dad did die of a stroke. Charlie admits that she almost died via sleeping pill overdose, and she got in a car because she is mildly suicidal and knew that this was a suicidal thing to do. Charlie's still so sure that Josh killed Maddie, and she wants to know why, but is like, I don't want to ask him. I don't want to ask why he did it, so she's just thinking about how she needs to kill him while she has the chance. But then a deer jumps in front of the car and they spin out. He checks on her to make sure she's okay, and then he climbs out of the car because he needs to check on the car. She is then thinking, this is my chance to kill him. I can step on the gas and just like run him over. And he notices that she's planning to do that. So he comes around and disarms her and is like, I've got these handcuffs. I need you to put these handcuffs on because you just tried to kill me with my car. And this is when she grabs her knife and she stabs him, and then she jumps out of the car and runs down the street. She actually just keeps running until she gets back to the diner. Very briefly, we switch over to Josh's point of view as he is bleeding out inside of his car because he's got to think about how badass Charlie is. Like, she is the most badass girl he has ever seen. Then we switch back to Charlie as she is back at the diner. The lights are all off. I don't know how long it's been, but all of the lights are off and everything is clean, even though they were just there 2 seconds ago. Charlie goes inside looking for help. She finds Marge, and she gets chloroformed by Marge. When she wakes up, she's sitting in a chair tied into the back room, and also now Robbie is knocking on the diner doors outside while Charlie is tied to a chair. Marge goes out to talk to Robbie and get him to go away, and she tells him that his girlfriend is gone. Robbie leaves without really fighting her over it. Once Marge comes back to the storeroom that Charlie is in, Charlie learns that Josh, her driver, was actually working for Marge and was hired by Marge to bring Charlie here. Shortly after that, she gets chloroformed again and she is led to Marge's car. Robbie was smart enough that once he was knocking on the windows and told to go, he just parked outside of the parking lot or hidden behind a building so that Marge couldn't see that he was waiting to see when she would come out, because now he's going to tail her. Josh is also still alive. He somehow bandaged his blade cut up and drove back to the diner. And so now you've got Marge taking Charlie to this abandoned vacation lodge that they passed along the way to the diner. And Robbie is following Marge and Josh is following Robbie. We get a brief snippet of Josh's point of view where we learn that Marge hired him for $20K to just bring her there. And he didn't question why some random old woman would want a random college student, but okay, for $20K, why not? At the lodge. It's so dumb. At the lodge, Marge admits to having like stage 4 cancer, and this is also Madeline's grandmother. Madeline was the diamond in her eye, was the love of the reason of all of her life, and all that Marge wants is information on who killed her beloved granddaughter, and Charlie is the secret to unlocking that, you stupid bitch. So all of this is just for Marge to be able to get information, extract information out of Charlie, or torture information, or try to make her recall what she saw the night that Maddie died. Josh and Rob show up, then there's a fire, there's a gunfight going on between Marge and Josh, and everything catches on fire, and Charlie is running away from Marge. There's an eventual moment where a gun gets thrown into a pool, and then Charlie is running around this huge lodge trying to determine what is reality and what is not reality, and how to avoid Marge as she's being chased by Marge. Obviously, there's a room full of mirrors because that's a number one visual that a lot of people are really into, especially if you're thinking in terms of movies. When she gets around to where the outside pool is at the lodge, Margie has caught up and she's got a gun pointed at Charlie. Robbie throws himself in front of the bullet to stop it from penetrating Charlie. Charlie gets her hands on the gun and has an opportunity to kill Marge, but eventually just does not. And Robbie and Charlie then flee the scene of this lodge that's on fire. Josh is still inside of that lodge, by the way, because he got shot also protecting Charlie and kind of just got left behind when she fled. And now Robbie and Charlie are fleeing the entire scene to go back to his car and get the hell out of here, while Marge lays on the ground, staying behind in the collapsing lodge, at peace with what she doesn't know now, because she still doesn't know who killed her daughter, how that happened. She's just at peace now. So Robbie and Charlie are driving away, and then Charlie opens the glove compartment and a little ring, like fiance marriage ring box falls out. She opens that little ring box and it turns out there are teeth in it, because guess what? Robbie has been the killer of these women all along, and he had plans to kill Charlie. And Charlie sees the teeth in the box and goes, "I cannot believe that you were the killer, Robbie." I personally refuse to believe that Charlie didn't recognize her own boyfriend standing side by side with her best friend / roommate. I know that trauma coping can be a hell of a drug, but with all of the times that this author has lied to me, I cannot give him the benefit of the doubt. He lost that privilege long ago for me to believe it. So Robbie says that he started killing people because most of them suck. He killed Maddie because she was loud, but the other girls that he killed just didn't deserve the attention that they desired. And he and Charlie are special people. But Charlie was so, Charlie was so different from other girls because she was so clueless with her head up in the movie clouds, and she was so precious. And now Robbie is confessing everything to Charlie for no reason, while saying that Charlie was special. And it's very specific. And, oh, that girl wasn't as pretty as she thought she was. Oh, that girl was loud and obnoxious. And it's pretty much like a Stacy's, going after the Stacy's kind of situation. And so he also admits, well, now that you know this about me, Charlie, and despite you being so special and so perfect for me, I'm going to have to kill you. We could have been perfect, wonderful life together, but I'm going to have to kill you because you know my secret. Charlie has a come to Jesus moment where she now wants to live, man, live. And so then she puts on her seatbelt and drives the car into the lake / waterfall that was nearby, while Robbie didn't follow her lead, so he flew against the windshield and cracked his face open. We switch over to Robbie's POV for a short second, where he's continuing to rant about how much he hates women the most again, and how many unworthy women hit on him thinking that they were hot shit when they just weren't all that at all. They were whores and sluts and gross and thought they were better than they really were, especially Maddie. But Charlie was not like other girls, which made her better. Charlie clips Robbie to the sinking car with handcuffs that she stole from Josh. Charlie gets back to the surface and there are cops and ambulances around. 2 people were removed from that lodge building and taken into the ambulances. One of them is Rob and one of them is Josh. Charlie tells the cops everything that she knows, and then we get a time skip to her going to the hospital and checking in on the 2 people in the hospital. Marge says that she is actually at peace and fine with what has happened. and she appreciates Charlie. And then Charlie goes to check on Josh, who then fawns all over her, offers her to have his car because he's not going to need it for now because he isn't so much damage anyway. She goes back to the lake, which is now a crime scene, so I'm not really sure how she just got let back in there, but she goes there to think everything through and how her mind movies and her separation from reality stopped her from seeing just how bad Robbie was. The end of the book then is at a premiere of a movie, because this whole book was actually just a Hollywood version of what happened in Charlie's life. And as she's monologuing, she's telling us how pretty much none of the book is true, because as the book told us, Hollywood magic makes everything bigger and better and badder than it actually was in real life. So Marge actually didn't survive to the end. Pretty much everything that happened in the book, she says, didn't actually happen the way that it happened, but this is what Hollywood did with her story. And now she is married to Josh. The only person that I wish had gotten away, because freaking Charlie, you are insane. Like, unironically insane. Also, speaking of insanity, I should probably mention that she technically cleaned up her brain movies, her delusional state, during the chase scene at the lodge with Marge, where she just had a flashback to Madeline and then was like, Madeline set her free. She had a delusional movie play where she was like forgiven by Madeline, and she had like a come to Jesus moment, and Madeline was like, everything is going to be okay. You have to let me go. And then and then Charlie was like, yes. And so then all of the brain movies, the mind movies that were confusing her in that whole chase scene with Marge were gone. She was now grounded. She now no longer had trauma. And I'm so sick of people using trauma in here for this cheap way and then suddenly just curing it. I'm looking at you, Shadow of the Conqueror, that just did this with rape. Are you joking me? I hate it so much. Oh, all you needed to do was say, look up, champ, it's fine. This book did it too. Oh, your delusions are gone. Your delusional traumas from when your parents died when you were a kid that you've been dealing with on antipsychotics. All it took for you was to have a delusion of your dead roommate to say, you get him, champ. You're stronger than this. And she's cured. So that's the end of the book, by the way. Being told that the entire book was a lie, and she's married to Josh now. Now, before I get into the side notes, I do have to apologize to Critical Drinker, because a week ago, I did a review of Dark Harvest, and at least it took his book more than 10 pages to fall apart. This book legitimately should not exist because of the decisions that Charlie makes as a character. She should never have gotten in the car with that person. Technically, it should have just been Robbie and her discovering that Robbie is a terrible person. But no. So getting onto the smaller notes, with characters, Charlie is set up immediately as not trusting characters. But then she goes to a bulletin board and accepts the first ride that she is offered by a stranger. This is what I'm talking about when I say failed internal logic when I'm looking at story. This is the kind of thing that drives me crazy. It is not that hard to actually just make me flatline enjoy a book. Like, it doesn't have to be in my genre or like something that I really, really love, but minimally, I just ask creators to be internally consistent, where if you tell me character is this, then I see that reflected in the character's actions. If character is told to me that these are their experiences and this is how they act, then make them act that way. Make the world around them, interpret them in the way that you, the author, are telling me. Because if all you do is tell me, oh, she's smart, oh, she's paranoid, but she's going to get in the car with this stranger after her friend was murdered, and there are still flyers everywhere from the murder, she is not smart, she's not that paranoid, I don't understand what you're doing here. If you can't keep your characters' wants, fears, objectives, morals, and reasons straight, you rip the reader out of the story. Everything with Charlie, and frankly everyone else in this book, is that they are puppets to the plot, to the author. There is no purpose. You have no reason to invest in any of it because the author proves that he will lie to your face, spit in your face, and go the other way without ever giving you reason to trust him again. Charlie has no reason to be as chill about the ride because of the circumstances all surrounding this entire book. The roommate, the 10 days to Thanksgiving, her family, the stranger being the stranger. And then every time she was like, I should get out of the car. I shouldn't do this because I know that it's bad. Or every time she actually openly acknowledges that is a red flag. And then it's like, you know what? Never mind. It's probably fine. Yeah. This doesn't work. Acknowledging that there are logical fallacies in your story and then shrugging them off does not make the reader shrug them off. It is just lazy. It is lazy writing. After what Charlie went through and her emotional and mental distress, I have a very difficult time believing that her family or Robbie would not be willing to drive her home, especially with Robbie targeting her as the serial killer. This whole thing could have been him taking her to its killing spot and then getting pulled off for these other things. This goes into character contradiction. This is something that I keep saying across the board for so many of these books with these authors who think that they can tell you one thing and then you watch how the character acts and it is a direct violation of what you're told. In The Stars We Steal by Alexa Dunn, it was that Leo was desirable and kind and that people really liked her. In Shadow of the Conqueror, it was that Dalen was repentant and thought that he was self-loathing and hated himself for his crimes and trying hard to be a better person while he abused, berated, and justified murdering everyone around him. And in this book, Charlie says that she is careful as we watch her make every bad decision against herself and continually recognize and dismiss red flags. It's one thing to lack awareness of who you are and what you're doing. It's another thing for an author to repeatedly use telling to express how a character is and not follow through. In theater, they tell you learn about characters in 3 ways: what others say about them, what they say about themselves, and what they do. These 3 things don't always line up, and that gives the viewer an idea of who the character is and how much they lie, who is a reliable narrator and who is not reliable. The reality in which that character lives is told through how these things line up or don't. If you tell me that a character is kind, but all you show me is if you tell me that a character is kind, but all you show me is them being mean, then I know you, the author, is lying to me, and I have no reason to trust you for the entirety of the book. And this keeps happening. Readers are not so dumb that you could tell them something and they won't notice when you violate your own promises. And this is what you're doing. And often, it's on purpose. Look at how this book changes perspectives between Marge and Josh and Robbie, specifically to lie to you about how they are feeling, what they are doing, their involvement. Marge in the bathroom saying, "Oh, I know what a girl looks like when she's in trouble and I'm going to help her." Robbie when he's sitting at his house watching movies and eating whatever by himself because he is sad that he got broken up without being told he was broken up with. Josh when he's trying to pretend that he's some kind of serial killer when he's actually a bounty hunter that was hired for this, and that information being kept from you. When you're in their own heads, the only person that is for is to perform against you. It is to lie to you. The author is thinking of you and spitting in your face instead of telling you the characters' stories. It's a bad writing, and I have no idea how this book is traditionally published. Going on to the prose, they're non-existent. Likely more of a convention of thriller, of the thriller genre, but maybe he wants a movie. I don't really know, but I think it's more of the thriller. Even if we're not talking about writing prose, I hate stuff like this. Quote, "It was a joke," Charlie says, bummed that she was forced to explain it. That's what we call telling. When people are actually saying show, don't tell, they mean don't tell that to that level. Because I can understand from the context that it was a joke was going to be her being like, it was a joke. Then you've also got explanations and descriptions that often leaned into immature and ill-fitting for the setting, mood, or age group, like, quote, "Doom and gloom hovered over her like a rain cloud." You also have a very difficult time building tension for a situation you literally put yourself in and you didn't think through, period. Quote from page 2 is an attempt, and this is very common with this author, as he tried to like line to build tension. But there was no tension here because Charlie was literally doing this to herself. Quote from page 2, "It only reinforces the feeling that she's alone, in a car, with a stranger." It feels so melodramatic. Very briefly, there was obviously no sense being made with Charlie saying that she had delusions and then dumping all of her antipsychotics before going on this trip with the stranger where she would not be able to tell reality from fiction. Why would you do this, author? What was the point other than to set this up to be a completely garbage protagonist that doesn't make any sense so that you could drag her around? It's also kind of bizarre to me that the author would actually make a choice that is worse for this kind of tension and make it less sense. Knowing Robbie was the killer in the end, Robbie should have volunteered to take her. He could have been the driver the whole time, and she could have been slowly remembering things or been nervous about him and not sure why. Then the other guy, who was the PI or whatever, the bounty hunter, could have actually been a cop trailing Robbie because he was suspicious of Robbie. But Robbie could have fooled Charlie that the guy was trying to kill them when he got noticed that they were being followed. That would have made so much more sense for the pairing of this movie. And that would have made so much more sense for the tension of this movie and the story being told in this with the ride. But it feels like the author just wanted to go, aha, twist after twist after twist, and didn't see that one coming, did you? Also, what the frick was with the, oh, stage 4 cancer is the reason that I'm doing this. I've got no reason to live, so YOLO! She just used the rest of her retirement to hire a bounty hunter to torture to death. Also, there was a moment in there where Charlie had no idea how to dial 911, and she was like, what is the number for 911? And then we had very slowly the same thing up there with the line by line slow thing the line by line slow thing up there to try to raise tension, except it was like, she pushed 9. She pushed 1. She pushed 1. She waited for the ringing. And that's parody level to me. Maybe that's what he was going for. It was bad. Setting reality. So this book struggles with setting reality for the reader, which makes it harder to create satisfaction in following Charlie around. Considering that she is especially delusional, it's more important to set the reality that she lives in. It's more important to set the reality that she lives in before breaking it entirely. And by reality, I just mean the expectations of what exists. If you lie about everything in the start of the book, then you train your reader to not trust anything that you say, so you cannot build a satisfying character arc of, ooh, that's what happened. For the longest time, I thought Charlie was just going to be so delusional that she didn't remember having killed her roommate, and then was going to assume the guy who was driving her did, lose her cool, kill him, and then her boyfriend would catch up and be made up entirely. I had a couple of different thoughts, including now with the boyfriend being the killer, but being the one to drive her, and the Josh being a bounty hunter, the Josh, the bounty hunter guy, being a cop instead, that was trailing Robbie. There were so many ways that you could do this that was not this. What is happening in traditional publishing? The POV shifting. So I'm usually not a huge fan of POV shifting because I feel like people don't do it very well. But Dan Simmons is like the master of POV shifting. I love Carrie and Comfort, and I love the way that he uses different perspectives in that book to tell the different stories that are going on at the same time or as they move forward. This book switches perspectives for the sole purpose of lying to your face. That is not what POV shifting is for. I don't care what you say. This is my preference. If you lie to me as your characters on purpose, I got a problem with you. Exposition. Very briefly, this just threw a bunch of exposition at the top. It could have molded in or woven in the backstory between Maddie and Charlie much more. Especially, it could have been reminding her of things about Charlie much more as it went through with Robbie, if Robbie had been there, instead of having to build this relationship immediately at the beginning. But I feel like that is a weakness that a lot of authors have right now, where they think you need to know exactly why things exist at the very beginning to justify their existence instead of learning it slowly through time. The strong woman monologue, oh my gosh. And then that never became anything. You've got her being like, it was just there to empower her for the moment, to be like, I need to kill this guy for women everywhere. And then it became nothing. But it is so patronizing. Okay, so this was the monologue. Let me know what your thoughts are on it down below, because bruh, I ran into this. And okay. It took Maddie being killed for her to understand the brutal truth that there are men out there who won't hesitate to hurt women. Men like Josh. After Maddie's murder, Charlie had assumed there was nothing that she could do about it. She loved Maddie, and Maddie loved her, and they would have been friends forever, no matter what Robbie thought. But then, she was gone, and all that remained was a burning rage. So Charlie internalized it, and blamed herself for leaving Maddie behind, for telling her to fuck off as she departed, for not being able to identify Josh after she saw him outside the bar. She blamed herself and hated herself and punished herself, because that's what women are taught to do. Blame themselves, blame the victims, tell themselves that since the Angela Dunleavys and Taylor Morrisons and Madeline Forresters of the world had sat through the same lessons on assault, received the same tiny bottles of pepper spray, and endured the same self-defense classes, it must have been their faults that they were attacked or raped or killed. No one tells women that none of it is their fault, that the blame falls squarely on the awful men who do terrible things and the fucked up society that raises them, molds them, makes excuses for them. People don't want to admit that there are monsters in their midst, so the monsters continue to roam free and the cycle of violence and blame continues. wrapped in Maddie's red jacket. She feels almost possessed by all the tough women she admired in movies. Stanwyck in Double Indemnity, Hayworth and the lady from Shanghai, Crawford in, well, everything. The kind of women men don't know if they want to kiss or kill. Women who claw and scrape through life because they have to. Now, it's Charlie's turn. She's no longer the scared, self-loathing girl she was when she left campus. She's something else. A fucking femme fatale. It's so dumb! Also, it doesn't make women look strong. It makes them look weak, and it's insulting. It's not female empowerment to be like, men tell women to take the blame, so women just take the blame. Why didn't anyone tell women that they didn't have to listen to that? Thanks. It's great to know that all you need to do is have one man tell something to a woman better than another man, more times than another man, because women obviously can't come up with thoughts on their own. Thanks, Riley Sager, for your empowering speech. Let's make sure to tell women things so they know what to think, because they obviously can't think on their own, those silly girls. But even, like, getting past that bullshit, why have a girl boss monologue in here and then no girl boss moment? She never does. I mean, she stabs him, but she's still a pussy the whole time. It hits every girl boss cliche where she can only be strong by one, demeaning men, belittling men, and then taking pleasure in just hurting men randomly. Like, she blamed Robbie and Josh for the state of men. Riley, get your balls checked, dude. Okay, so in the climax, I didn't believe that she wouldn't have recognized her boyfriend as the killer, being the last person to be seen with Maddie alive. I don't understand why Josh would drive off with Charlie if he was hired by Marge to leave her, because then they could have just knocked her out in the bathroom. Like, why didn't Marge chloroform her when she went to the bathroom to help Charlie? There was no reason for any of that. He did his job. He brought the girl there, and that should have been that. Why did Robbie go to save Charlie from Marge in the first place if Rob was supposed to be the killer all along? That doesn't make any sense. Is it because he wanted to marry her, and now that she knew that he was the killer, that couldn't happen? Like, up until that point when the ring box fell out and she saw the teeth, he was still into her, but because she saw the teeth, then it changed. We didn't get very much of that. Stage 4 cancer felt a lot like Will Jordan's bringing up 9/11 as a random bad guy thing. And then why couldn't Marge just talk to Charlie? If she wanted answers and to try to work with Charlie to remember what happened to her daughter or her granddaughter, why not just visit her? Why have this elaborate $20,000 kidnapping and then take her to an abandoned lodge? On the final point, everything being fake. This being a movie that was highly over-exaggerated is the same thing as And Then I Woke Up from a Dream and none of it just happened. A big waste of time. One of the worst ways, if not the worst way, to end a book or a story, period, saying none of it mattered. Haha, I just lied to your face for hours. That's what it feels like. So, screw you. Survive the night. More like survive the bullshit. I have such a hard time right now understanding what is going through people's heads. So, with that said, obviously this book is nonsensical. Obviously it should have had a developmental editor, if not a critique partner, something to make it make sense. All I get from authors that lie to your face and then do this, haha, I'm clever, it just feels arrogant. I don't know if this author is arrogant. I don't know anything about him, but the writing style like this comes off as disrespectful and arrogant to the readers. And you might as well take a chance with indie, because if this is the best thing that a New York Times bestseller has to offer, like, yeah, it's the same quality as a lot of the indie books that I have not enjoyed. At least there's more creativity in indie books. You had a great, interesting idea, and that's what I hate most about any of these book reviews, is that there's always a cool idea in there, but somehow they were so lazy to not develop it, and it hurts my soul. So that said, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Did you read Survive the Night? Will you read Survive the Night? What do you think of stories that end with this switch ending that says, hey, none of it was real, by the way? Does it bother you? Does it not bother you? Let me know all of your thoughts and more. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
The only people who should come are those who want to meet their monsters.
If this is what Agatha wants, I don't know how we can even dispute it.
I change lives, baby.
And I end them. Sweetheart, no bargains hold. Only fools know restraint.
Only losers lose!
I've been under the knife so many times, I'm practically immune to it.
If your scissors are dull, may I recommend sharpening them with leather?
I think I hit you.
Mimal says I must have a guardian angel.
To enter the ring but abstain from playing is suicidal. Your virtue makes you nothing but a liability.
You're gonna die. You're gonna die. You're gonna die.